Thank you so much for having me at this event. I think this will be a little bit of fun. We'll be talking about a prior event that was a kind of a hacking contest called Hack the Building that took place in Annapolis with the Missy group with Dreamport. And we'll be talking about how we can use that information to improve red teaming. So what are we going to talk about? Essentially, leveraging different adversarial tactics and ways to think out of the box and different techniques that should be done for an evolving red team atmosphere. And I'll be showing some of the techniques I use to get some information. Please don't judge my Python code, it works. That should be more than enough. So the mantra of ICS OT, I mean, in my personal opinion, it's IT is about confidentiality, OT is about availability. And that's really the core of what Red Team is trying to do in this mix is ensure that the confidentiality and availability take place by making sure the holes have been discovered prior to them being available to different people trying to break in. So please don't read this whole slide. This is just the kind of things that go through a red team manager's head. In a nutshell, it's you're worried a lot about the known knowns. You're worried about there are I need to ensure that there's no viable ways to get into the network via CVEs. There's nothing exposed that shouldn't be. You're going through the checklist of things that you've already done time and time again. And this is a very time-consuming operation to make sure all of the known knowns are being done. And it's a lot of things, and the network's always changing, so it's a lot of work. What we're going to talk about is the known unknowns in this talk. It's how can I pull things from a larger community in order to improve the red team actions and also do so without getting stuck down lots of rat holes, wasting time doing that sort. I mean, essentially at the end of the day, you want to have better problem solving skills. You can say to yourself that I have these systems and I have to assume that there are flaws that I don't know about that someone else might, and I need to improve the way that we're doing our red team operations to find these problems so that they can be solved more efficiently. So red teaming versus pen testing. I know that we have a very diverse audience in the crowd, so I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the subtle differences between these two things. A pen test is often a very one-off, short-term, very narrow in scope scenario where you're trying to essentially find as many vulnerabilities as possible in a very narrow scope. It often doesn't go into incident response. Red teaming is more of an ongoing adversarial test. And it's something that's evolved over time and often has full-time staff. In the ICSOT world, this is something that is becoming more and more of a practice. So when you hire pen testers, really what you're looking for is those gotcha moments where you see something that you are too close to the project in order to really embrace. I mean, not the kind of gotcha moment like when the pen testers are arrested, but it's kind of that out of the box thinking, that thing that you never considered. And that's really what I want to tap into with the Hack the Building challenge. So one of the biggest problems with red teaming is you're not sure if you're in the groove or stuck in a rut. Am I doing the audits I know that I need to have done, but am I really venturing past those audits? And if I were to venture past them, how do I productively go after this sort of thing? So let's crowdsource some new techniques from a massive ICS hacking event, which worked out very well. It took place about 4 months ago, and it was sponsored by US Cyber Command. And since Keysight was one of the sponsors of that event, we were able to be part of the infrastructure, and we were able to capture every single packet that took place during the entire event. So I have a ton of data on this, and this is essentially what I'll be talking about for the next 20 minutes. There were so many fun challenges in this. I mean, it wasn't all just attempting to like get into the HVAC system. There's also some little challenges like this one right here. You were trying to have this hammer smack the helmets, and if you could do so, I believe you got some sort of prize. But in general, it was a very, very good event. One of the first things I did was I modeled all the traffic. This is probably hard to see. This is a tool called PCAP X-ray. It allows you to see all the nodes. You zoom in a little bit more. Also, all the ways that data traverses on this. And for an ICS network, it's very critical. So you have a ton of information to understand who can talk to who. And it's often not always what you think, because people make mistakes and routes exist that shouldn't. But you can see here, you can see a lot of different elements in this network. But let's look at the data set more. This is a difficult data set to work with. It took place over a number of days, and at the end of the day, we ended up storing it all in PCAPs, and it was just about 4 terabytes of space on a PCAP. Anyone who's ever worked with PCAPs knows that Wireshark tends to have a tough time opening a PCAP more than a couple hundred meg. I mean, it's almost impossible to open one of a much larger size, and also 4 terabytes is 4 times larger than the entire hard drive on my MacBook. So it was a difficult thing to work with in order to find these gems, find these attack techniques that I want to start to replicate inside of my ICS red teaming. So some of the first things that I did is I wanted to find out how many total packets were in this. You can see here it's about 3.55 billion. Like I said, you're going to have to look at a lot of my mediocre Python and other code. But so, okay, what's in this data set? Let's start off by seeing what protocols are being used. So I wrote this little quick bit to go through and use T-Shark and start slicing and dicing and finding which protocols are being used in the entirety of the 12,000 different PCAPs that were 4 terabytes. So these were the different PCAPs that took place on both the IT and the OT side during the entirety of the events. You can see there's a lot of protocols here that are synonymous with industrial control systems like Modbus and BACnet and things of that sort, but also it seems like BitTorrent was taking place on there and other stuff. I mean, it was a dirty network. There were a lot of people on there doing this hacking challenge for several days. So you have to essentially find the wheat from the chaff. So let's narrow it down to some useful ones was the first thing that I did. I want to find some of the more targeted attacks. I want to focus on protocols that are more meaningful to me. I focused a lot of MQTT and SIP and also BACnet. And also I could model these as well when I go through the various traffic scenarios. And there was tons and tons of this traffic to go through. Getting closer to the technology, I'm sure that a lot of people who work in these networks, when they look at BACnet, their first thing they're saying is, okay, am I going to find a JSON there? I mean, if you have Honeywell, Siemens, Rockwell, whomever, one of the best ways to plug them all in together is with Jace. And the Jace 8000 is the current version of this. And you can plug everything into this, and it is a great way to command and control the entire network. It has a lot of memory in it. It has a great programming language. I know people who've gone to Jace University to figure this out, but it adds another problem is, okay, if this Jace right here plugs in all of the systems in a network, it doesn't matter if it's a power grid network or a machine network or whatever it is, you have essentially created one single point where you can control the entire thing. And there are known vulnerabilities for different Jace products. And also, I mean, you can search Shodan for Jace, and you can absolutely find a whole bunch of them on there. So it's from a red teaming standpoint, you want to go after things that could be the highest value targets, and this is absolutely one of them. And it's also whenever I see BACnets, one of the first things I think of is, oh, can I talk to a Jace? HTTP is also another great thing to scrape for because a lot of JSON requests are taking place, especially if there's threat intelligence going on. I mean, I want to see sticks, and I'm looking for those kind of JSON-y things. But really, since I have a finite amount of time in talk, I want to talk about malware. I think malware is the most interesting scenario that I could focus on. Right here, you can see some little pieces and snippets from the black energy malware that was really interesting about 5 or 6 years ago, especially in places like Ukraine. But I want to talk about malware inside of this hacking challenge. And if I'm a red team member, and I'm very worried about malware, I want to make sure that all the techniques that I'm using are up to snuff. So let's see if someone was able to use malware effectively during this hacking challenge. So there's really two ways to analyze malware. If you're in the IT side of the network and you're worried about the HMI being infected, um, so a lot of different controls inside of ICS networks, as I'm sure many people on this call know, don't necessarily have to be on a fully patched version of Windows 10 with Windows Defender and CrowdStrike and all the endpoint scenarios on there. There's a lot of stuff that's regrettably forced to be stuck on Windows XP machines or Windows CE. I watched a really interesting talk more than a few years ago at Black Hat by a gentleman who worked at CERN, and he was showing that a very critical piece of equipment that controlled a Large Hadron Collider was running like Windows CE or something like that. So there's really two ways to analyze files in order to see if they have maliciousness in them. There is static analysis and dynamic analysis. Now, static analysis essentially is taking a look at the file as it is. You're looking for telltale signs or breadcrumbs that they are malicious. And there are packers and cryptors and different ways to obfuscate what's happening in there. But at the end of the day, the operating system absolutely needs to be able to understand and interpret what kind of file this is and what it's doing. So typically you're using a thing called Yara rules, and you're using this for your static analysis. And static analysis is a very effective way to do things. The other side of the coin is dynamic analysis, and dynamic analysis is essentially when you run the file and see what it does. To start doing things it shouldn't do. Is it immediately trying to, I don't know, change Windows registry or turn off the firewall or make a socket connection to an outside IP address or any number of other things that would say, this right here really isn't something that should be done. Companies like Nozomi working in this are absolutely really geared towards those static Yara rules that they're putting into real-time scenarios. And in a nutshell, that is threat intelligence, and that is their threat intelligence, and that's really what makes their value in the network, is having good intelligence on this. And you can download and use Yara rules on your own. They're not a secret sauce. Just having great Yara rules really is the research being done at companies like a Dragos or a Nozomi or whatnot. So, okay, I've got a whole bunch of content, and I want to see if there is special malware in this 4 terabytes. I want to see special malware that actually got through some of these various solutions. I mean, it's really what we're trying to do for a red teamer. We want to find something that's novel. We want to find something that is going to work. So I use a tool called Foremost. It was written by the US Air Force. And right here, you can see in just one of my 12,000 PCAPs, there was 90 files pulled from this one. I mean, some HTML files, some zip files, and some images. I mean, I'm really looking for a lot of the portable executable stuff and things of that sort, but still, there's absolutely aspects of malware that can send itself in 2 stages, where image files contain some pieces of it, but there'll still be an executable that'll grab something from an image file also. But regardless, you're going to want to take a look at everything. So I wrote the script to rip through and grab all of those. You can see here, I do block out a bunch of stuff. So I have multiple machines, and I don't want everyone to see what my usernames are in some of these. But either way, let's go sifting through this massive amount of data. So I found about 213,000 files inside of this, and that's just a lot. I mean, I want to be efficient. I don't want to go down all these rat holes. And even though I would love to have like an intern and make an intern go through all these things, they would be really poorly spent not automating this task. And like I said, I don't just want malicious. I want novel. I want something that can really evade a great inspection engine. I want something I haven't seen before. I want a reason for me to change tactics. And also, I don't necessarily believe I have 213,000 unique files. I have a lot of files, but until I see some hashes, I'm not going to say, unless I see SHA-256 hashes, I'm not going to believe that they're all unique. But either way, there's a lot. So I'll probably put these up on GitHub a little bit later. I decided I was going to use Google's open source engine, VirusTotal, in order to do a massive vetting of my 100,000 some odd files. So I love working with threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is oftentimes very accessible to a lot of people. And if you have a great engine like VirusTotal, you have a lot of different contributors to it. And that's a really, really interesting thing. So if you look inside of these files right here, we'll be able to say, okay, um, this one right here on the left is I'm just going to upload everything into VirusTotal. And what I get back is going to be a lot of information. So on the right, later on, I'll be able to grab them off there. What VirusTotal does is they give you a resource key for each one, but if you're clever and look at it, you notice, yeah, that's actually also the SHA-256 of each file. And also here, you can see I've grayed out my API key. I'm sorry, I'm not giving that out also, in addition to my my usernames on one of my Linux boxes in this talk. But okay, so when you run this kind of thing to upload a gajillion files and run threat intelligence on it, I mean, granted, I could run Yara rules I could download off the internet onto these, looking for my special novel malware, but I don't think I'd find anything. I think I'd find things that I'd expect to find, but not that novel, interesting malware, not my new red team tactic, not my new, this is something that I want to use effectively and prove that I can be owned by it so that the good folks over on blue team that I'm working with very closely can say, okay, we have a new tactic and we need to make sure that we can defend against this. And then we need to have a paper written to make sure other people know to defend against this, and so on and so forth in the intelligence and security community. So as you can see right here, this is the output of my code. Each one of these is the piece of information given back by VirusTotal every time you upload a new file. There's a little scan ID and whatnot, and your ID is your resource. So actually, if you go back here, you're going to see that I do indeed print out my resource code. So file print code, and print code is my resource, and resource is just my response from the JSON action that I send up, which is the file, and my API key, which I registered with them. So you see I print that out. Also, please note that these numberings right here, that was not the original file name. I don't know what the original file name is. When Foremost extracts that, it just throws a numbering system in there, it seems. It doesn't actually preserve that original name. And I'm sure that I could use some forensics tools and some metadata tools to get some other information, but that would be a whole separate project. In fact, that'd be a very valuable project to do if you were to go ahead and find something novel, because you want to start piecing it together once you disassemble it. If they were so foolish as to leave some great metadata inside there, then why wouldn't you grab that? So, okay, let's find our needles in the haystack. So you can see right here that I'm grepping for positive and my log file that I piped everything to, and it's like, nope, 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 nope. And it was like 36,000 lines long of this. So I was like, okay, let's just cat it and grep positives and then grab all values in this and the second field that are greater than 1, and pay dirt. We hit a whole bunch of things that VirusTotal thought was indeed malware. And there were a lot of them. And this is where it got a little bit by hand, but I found some interesting ones that I wanted to talk about. So all this malware did make it from, it did make it into the network. It was able to touch HMIs. It was able to do, it was able to exist. It was not stopped, but we were doing a lot of monitoring stuff, but regardless, this was the more interesting stuff. So this one right here, only 7 engines found it. It was found by Malwarebytes and Sophos and a few others, and it was fairly unique. Right here, static AI, just in case, once you see a lot of this, you see the same words over again. It's static analysis using artificial intelligence. Same thing, machine learning, portable executable. First time this one was ever seen was when I uploaded it, which is kind of interesting. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff uploaded up to VirusTotal. But then again, at the same note, anyone who's written anything knows that if you change a single aspect of it, you'll get a completely different SHA-256 hash. So, I mean, this is where you start digging a little bit deeper, but it's really interesting to note that it's something that was uniquely seen. So at this point, now as a red teamer looking for new adversarial tactics, I want to say, okay, this unique malware, I mean, did it work? How successful was it? Did the targets change behavior afterwards? Did it start making connections? What PLCs were connected to this target? I mean, there's a lot of piece of information. This is all Windows malware, and it was all controlling various PLCs. But either way, this was what was interesting to find. Same thing with this one. Only 6 engines found this one. Sophos, Sentinel-1 again. This one was like 9, but this is 9 out of 70 engines, and that's kind of interesting. Like FireEye thought that this one was malicious. Symantec, Microsoft for the first time. Got one over here. I can make this a little bit bigger. So you can see here that like a lot of major companies, like Kaspersky on this one, Tencent, you see Sophos on this one, McAfee on this one, just didn't their static rules did not say there was anything detectable in this after it analyzed it, and that makes me want to take another look at it. I mean, if you were to put in something in there that was a little bit older and been around the block a bit, they'd be like, yes, this is absolutely Zeus, this is absolutely like Black Energy, this is all the things that we've seen before. But I'm looking for new things. We're making new adversarial techniques. So really at this point, I want to find out, and if I had more time, I would definitely go through this within this talk. I want to know what techniques allow this malware to be successful, and why aren't we using these techniques? And how long would it have taken the blue team to realize they were breached? I mean, talking to different servers, were they using a better way of talking to a command and control server? Were they making a socket connection, or were they doing something that was novel? Is there a new way to do this? Different infection scenarios. Was it infected on site or via supply chain? I mean, in a nutshell, I'd want to know what was so successful about these scenarios that were done. And what's great about this is all folks who were not on the team that I'm working with's ideas. I'm seeing someone else's techniques. And then you can look at this and say, do I want to incorporate this? Is this a successful technique? Is this what should be done? I mean, it's a great way to crowdsource that kind of information. Really quickly, the way we were able to gather this information is Keysight Technologies makes really brilliant kind of visibility solutions. We have a concept called a network packet broker. Packet brokers are FPGA oriented. Here's one in the upper right-hand corner, solutions that allow you to make very, very complex filter rules. I'll go down a little bit and show some of these. So we can do layer 7 taps that say, okay, I want to have various protocols go here. So let's say, for example, BACnet, something very interesting, or anything coming from this zone is very interesting, or anything on this protocol, or what have you. So let me move past this because I have finite time to talk about this. And we do work very well with different partners for SIEMs and NetFlow. But what's great about this is they are meant to be tough solutions. These solutions we have can go into very high low temperatures, massive amounts of steam and uniqueness in terms of putting into environments that may be very rugged. So you need a tough mechanism to tap and filter traffic inside of these networks, which some we create very well. This is what our GUI looks like on this, and it's really tough to see, but if you look here on your right, you can see here is Nozomi Networks, Vectra, here's some Raspberry Pis, here's Sentry, here's Zool, here's Forescout. In a nutshell, what we did is we have all the traffic coming in, and I'm gonna make a filter rule. And this filter rule right here is saying, okay, I have 10 different tools, 10 different security tools that need to analyze this traffic. Can you make me 10 copies of it all at the same time and can you pull that out of band? So I want to have traffic go through this, but I want a copy of it also to go to these 10 tools the whole time through. And I want to do it with latency in the nanoseconds because it was written in Xilinx FPGAs. So that's essentially what we do with this solution. And it really allows you to send the right packets to the right tool based on filter rules all the way up to layer 7. And in terms of capturing events in order to inspect them, either as a blue team looking for the breadcrumbs of a breach, or as a red team member trying to get some better, new, fancy adversarial tactics. It's really, really a great way to just have access to all of your data all the time in real time without screwing things up. You see here, this is a little, actually, I should have showed this earlier. This is a zoom in as to how we peeled off each piece of that without disrupting the whole thing. And we can put bypass switches to ensure 1,000% uptime no matter what. And we also have another tool running at the same time. It was our threat simulator tool. Threat simulator is a SecOps tool that can basically go through the majority of the MITRE ATT&CK framework and attempt to do little red team audits itself. You can attempt to do things like TrickBot or various CV attacks over and over and over again in automated fashion, just to see if you can send attack traffic from zone A to zone B through the security policies. It can endpoint over at Linux boxes, Windows boxes. It's very good for testing things like zero trust and whatnot. But it's a great way to have a baseline continuously of doing red team tactics over and over again, so that when you have your talented, very skilled folks who are going to be running more complex scenarios based off of study and years of work, they don't have to do the simplistic things. They don't have to do the things that should definitely be caught. They can be a little bit more tactical.